welcome to the Golden Valley Historical Society. We're pleased to have you here this evening. I hope some of you have taken this opportunity this week to get out in the dark and see the aurora. We don't get a chance to see the aurora lights this far south too often, so I hope you've had an opportunity to maybe get out and see a little peek of it. I understand if you take pictures with your phone, it's a little more dramatic than when you're looking up with your plain old eyeballs. But nonetheless, an opportunity to see something pretty spectacular. All right, well, tonight, oh goodness, now I've just lost my notes. All right, don't lose notes. That's the first thing. First thing is, don't lose your notes. Hang on just a second, see why I have lost my notes. You want to hear my grocery list? No? No, probably not. All right, here we go. But before I introduce tonight's speakers, I do want to tell you about upcoming programs here. We are going to have the ever-popular holiday open house on December 13th. That's a Saturday. We're going to decorate the church, so you'll get an opportunity to have a little holiday magic in this church. The museum will be open. We'll have cookies with Byerly's Peggy. So come and relive that and have some enjoyable holiday magic with us here on December 13th. Did I say 31st? 13th. It's a Saturday from 11 to 3. We hope you can all join it. And as it is an open house, it's a drop-in. You don't have to put on your best clothes, but do come prepared to buy some signs. So that's the upcoming thing. And that actually is, I think, the fifth. This will be our 5th year that we'll have been doing holiday open houses. So come and help us celebrate that tradition. Tonight's program is Polio and the Evolution of the Courage Center. This program is co-sponsored by Golden Valley Rotary, and we want to thank Golden Valley Rotary for that co-sponsorship and be able to highlight their fine work as well. After our speakers, we're going to have a Q&A session, but before that, our own Shep Harris will tell us about a challenge and a call to action. So in between the speakers and the Q&A, so hold all your questions, we're going to be faced with a challenge. It's not a physical challenge, you don't have to worry about that. You don't have to change your clothes for this. So our first speaker is going to explore the history of the Courage Center, this remarkable health center here in Golden Valley, and our second speaker is going to explain Rotary's vital mission to eradicate polio. Our first speaker is Erica Schul, and she serves as the operation director. Oh, I'm sorry, I'm Lynn Nelson Mason, I'm the board chair. Okay, that's over with. The person who can't find notes on her phone. Erica Schul serves as the operations director and post-acute care and community services at Courage County Rehabilitation Institute. There she focuses on supporting recovery, independence, and the quality of life for patients. Her background includes work in mental health, geriatrics, hospice, and palliative care. Outside of work, Erica enjoys life with her husband, their 3 young kids, and 3 furry family members. Tim Mulcrone, excuse me, thank you very much. Should have done that earlier too. Nonetheless, Tim Mulcrone is the last remaining charter member of the Chanhassen Rotary, founded in 1987. He served 3 terms as president and is on many club and district committees. And since 2012, he has been Rotary District 5950's polio chair. We were trying to figure out how big Rotary 5950 was, and we don't have a square mileage, but it's big. So, a lot of Minnesota. Tim always has the latest on Rotary's flagship initiative, the worldwide eradication of polio. He retired from a career in law enforcement and has a passion for singing songs from the Great American Songbook. He resides with his wife Ginger in Savage, where they hand-built their home on the Credit River. So we're in for a treat tonight with our two speakers, and please welcome Erica Scholl.
And my first test is this working?
Yes.
You can hear me? Excellent. I was not gifted with one of those voices that naturally projects. I was not a yeller. So I'm glad we have this. Thanks so much for the introduction, Lynn. I'm just going to start too by saying gratitude for getting me through these doors. I have wanted to come here for years and I had not yet, so I'm viewing this as righting a long-standing wrong. And why I say that is I lived in Gold Valley for years. I work at a building in Gold Valley. My dad lives here, my sister lives here, my sister-in-law lives here, my cousin. So the Golden Valley very much has been a great home and place. So just tickled to finally be here, and thanks so much for the invitation. So when we're talking about polio, it's quite a meaty subject. We can really tackle it from a lot of different angles. Knowing that this is a co-sponsorship between two different Golden Valley steeped organizations, figured let's try to keep it local and close to home. So really it's a quick exploration of the people and places that help shape polio rehabilitation. And then I'll kick it over to my new friend, Mr. Tim Mulcrone, who will really go a little bit deeper in terms of both the history and the what's now. So with that, test 2, clicker. Alrighty. So first, just a couple of slides for grounding, because I'm not always sure who's walking in the doors and what level of background or familiarity you may have with polio. So just, we're going to set the stage. Then we're going to jump to Sister Kenny, and then Courage Center, and then the legacy between Courage Center, Sister Kenny. Alrighty. Try not to go too deep into definitions here, because that's not the most fun at the jazziest part of this presentation. But for those newer to exploring polio, polio or poliomyelitis is, simply put, an illness caused by a virus that typically attacks or settles in spinal cord or brainstem. It can have very mild symptoms, all the way to fairly debilitating, as well as in some instances, particularly early on in the initial epidemic's death. You can see down below there a bit of a timeline, and again I'll let kind of more of the history, I'll kick that over to Tim. But again, just for some foundation setting, polio back in 1894 was really the first documented outbreak. In 1908 is when it became a reportable disease or condition. In the mid-early 30s is when they started to do more research around vaccinations, treatments. None of that really got traction until the early 50s when the first successful vaccine came to be, and really the 40s and the 50s were kind of peak pandemic times, if you will, for polio, and that's also where a lot of our story is locally in terms of the birth of polio rehab here in Minnesota. My last foundational slide, and then it gets more interesting, is just again a little bit of context in terms of case rates, death. So we have from the inception of polio to the left-hand side, all the way to more current 21st century here, and just kind of circled that 1940s to 1950s, both because that really is when we saw our peaks nationally as well as here in Minnesota. So 1946 was kind of peak year for us in polio here locally, as well as again that's really where a lot of our story takes place in terms of Sister Kenny and later Courage Center. All right, I love this quote. So this is from Dr. Gaylord Anderson, and he was a preeminent figure at the U of M and was the director of public health for many years. And he said, and this was again kind of peak pandemic era, that there were really two epidemics. One was the polio epidemic, and the other was mass hysteria. And when I was putting these slides together and refamiliarizing myself with Dr. Anderson, like there are so many kind of eerie parallels between this and our friend COVID. So just kind of setting the stage before we jump into Sister Kenny, it was very much a time of fear. This is unknown, it's scary. There's not a confirmed way to prevent getting it. And so what do people do similar to COVID? It's a lot of isolation, school being canceled, church, weddings, again, a lot of similarities to COVID. And I gotta say, I found this little tidbit, like you know something is really bad in Minnesota if the state fair is canceled. So that happened in 1946. So that is the era that we're kind of living in when Sister Kenny comes to town. So Sister Kenny, who is she? Just a couple of clip notes on here. So she was born in 1880 in Australia, in rural Australia, as Elizabeth Kenny. She's really considered to be the grandmother of polio rehabilitation. At the time, uncommon for there to be a preeminent woman in science, kind of bucking at the time the good old boys club of this is how we treat polio and this is what it needs to be. And she had a very different take that we will get on in a couple of moments. And she really was a polarizing figure because of that. And the other, I think, just kind of fun tidbit. So she's frequently cited as a sister and as a nurse. The sister piece is not at all religious in terms of why she's Sister Kenny. It is because when she was in the Australian military service, they used the word sister much like we use the word charge nurse. So that was their way of honoring her skill set, that she was really the head nurse, if you will. The other kind of fun fact, because she's frequently cited as a nurse, is that she didn't actually have any formal nursing training. So she really was self-taught. She had a couple of really influential mentors, and how she originally even got into the world of rehab is after an accident when she was young. She broke her wrist. She was trying to figure out ways to rehab and get function and mobility back, and that really started her on this journey of mobility and wellness. Okay, so we're starting way back when she's in Australia, and then we will get to her journey into Minnesota. So 1910 is when she started her own nursing practice, again, entirely self-taught. So she was on horseback, visiting patients who may call her. 1911 is when she saw her first polio patient. So if you recall from one of the first slides, 1908 is really the date when polio was cemented as its reportable, identifiable disease. So this is very early on in the trajectory. And she's in rural Australia. And because of that, she doesn't have, a nice playbook. She's not going on to, WebMD, how do I treat this? It's very much, she is learning on the fly in some respects, refining her different treatment methods, which later become really the foundation for modern physical therapy. Very much a self-starter and entrepreneur as well. So she started her own small hospital in 1813. Did end up closing that a couple years later. Then she joined the military in World War I and kind of sweet-talked her way into that basic and no formal training. Soon really passed muster, and people could see her for what she brought to the table, earning that moniker Sister Elizabeth Kenny. She then travels really extensively across all of Australia, setting up different clinics now that she's starting to kind of hone her Sister Kenny technique for polio rehabilitation. Later makes a couple different trips to England, setting up similar clinics for polio rehab. And then the circle thoughts there, in 1940, she comes to the United States. So 1940s again, it is people are panicked. It's, I think, hysteria. Going back to Dr. Gaylord Anderson is also a fair way to put it. So she's really coming in at a really pivotal point here. So she first stops at both New York and then Chicago. She first was coming over, she got support from the Australian government, wanted to come to New York, Chicago, the bigger cities, to really test out her version of polio rehab, really cement that, get the kind of global nod of this is the right way to be doing things. She had a very icy reception at both of those cities. Again, she was recommending things like moist heat, gentle movement, really at a time when the going standard and what medical doctors were saying, no, we need to immobilize individuals, we need to put them in braces, in leg splints, and they should not move. And if you're having them move, that's counter to their rehab. So she's very much abutting what the going rate knowledge and acceptance is at that time. So where else can I go? She comes to Minneapolis. Well, first quick pit stop in then she comes over to Minneapolis. So she's at the University of Minnesota, Minneapolis General Hospital later, which is how we know now, HCMC. She's really kind of spreading her wings and her tentacles for her version of polio rehab across Minnesota. In 1942 is really when she cements her role in Minnesota as the preeminent figure in polio rehabilitation and launches the Elizabeth Kenny Clinic, later becoming the Sister Kenny Institute in 1942. So it's roughly a 100-bed kind of hospital or clinic, all focused on serving individuals with polio. In the peak, kind of 1945, 1946, there is such a surge of polio that the existing clinic cannot adequately care for everyone. So they get special permission to open up Fort Snelling. So it's both kind of two different clinics going at the same time, headed up both of them by Dr. Kenny. Sister Kenny Foundation started in 1943 to really support ongoing operations of the clinic. And then in 1975, and why you see a line of health down here, is because Abbott Northwestern merged with the Sister Kenny Institute. So what is her approach to treating polio? So I mentioned this just a couple minutes ago here, but really it is moving away from immobility, from the leg sprints, the braces, and it's really focusing on gentle and repetitive movement of individuals' limbs to help them regain as much as possible function in their limbs, as well as she relied heavily on heat, and particularly moist heat. The other piece that I think is, for anyone who's in the clinical field like myself, we hear all the time about individualized treatment plans, and that is the expectation now for if you go to any hospital, any clinic, you should have an individualized treatment plan, meaning it shouldn't be you come in, they give you a diagnosis, and then you have the exact same, you're going to do A, B, and C to get better. So this is also a way in which she's kind of a pioneering voice, if you will, is that she really kind of coined this individualized treatment plan for patients under her care. All right, so now we're segueing a bit into Courage Center, and then in just a moment we'll kind of weave the two together. So Courage Center, I would not have picked this name myself, but it was a different time. In 1928, formed as the Minnesota Society for Crippled Children and Adults. It still very much has that same tenet and kind of guiding stars, if you will, in terms of helping those who are differently abled live well, reintegrate in the community, and providing a lot of support and advocacy, including individuals with polio and post-polio. In 1973 is when our Golden Valley campus was dedicated, a mile or two down the road here. And then in 2013, and kind of the coming together of these different people and places, so the Sister Kenny Institute, which merged with Abbott Northwestern and Alina, came together with Courage Center in 2013, forming Courage Kenny. So our campus, here's a nice little picture. I love all the natural sunlight here is on the right. And under one roof, again, going back to the tenets of helping people who are differently abled live, play, and work to the best of their abilities, it is a lot of different programming under one roof that helps serve that same purpose. So we have adaptive sports and recreation, aquatics. I was talking to your new friend Shep Harris in the back. It's like, fun fact, it's one of the few therapeutic pools in the Twin Cities, which is correct. And it is that way because it is 92 degrees. And why it is so warm, if you think about we're Minnesotans here, you jump into the lake and your muscles initially clench up and freeze, and it's counterintuitive for a lot of our clients, so we intentionally keep it really warm, very therapeutic. We have a large fitness center that is all adaptive, so every piece of equipment you see in the fitness center, those who are able-bodied and differently able-bodied are able to use our equipment, we're able to adapt all of it. We have rehab psychology, which is, I think, really important because there's also the huge emotional component that goes into if you had a congenital born with something making you differently abled, or you had some sort of acute accident, really learning to kind of live in a different way. We have medical doctors, PMR providers, really focusing on function and mobility, support groups, and then we have our inpatient transitional rehab program as well. So all of this started in 1973 in terms of the building, but the programming starting back again to 1928, we still have a fair amount of post-polio patients that we take care of on a daily basis, mostly in our outpatient therapy and aquatics. So I think, and for this audience, and I think a lot of you are no strangers to polio, so you know this, but I think it's kind of a common misconception that polio is in the past and it doesn't exist, and let's talk more about this, and it's not true. So very much still a place where we can support and embrace individuals with polio. All right, so really the legacy of Sister Kenny and Courage Center. Definitely these are two people places that we can be really proud of Minnesotans. So a couple different kind of pieces that we can hang our hats on. One is care model. So completely from Sister Kenny revolutionized and got accepted what is still current today, considered best in class for polio rehabilitation. The other piece, and I just think is super neat about Sister Kenny, I could talk about her all day, one of my heroes, is that she really was the godmother not only for polio rehab but for physical therapy, education. The legacy of her techniques still live on today. There are countless clinicians, therapists who are trained in her principles and infrastructure. So I showed you like a picture, but we have other campuses and there are other amazing institutes that also support those who are differently able as well as those with polio. So physical buildings, programming. I'll end with my favorite quote and then I'll kick it over to you, Tim. So really the legacy of Courage Kenny, which incorporates Sister Kenny and Courage Center, is to help everyone live, work, and play to the best of their potential. So I am going to kick it over to new friend, Mr. Mulcrone.
Thank you. Well, no. Such a lovely voice. So quiet, so calm. I feel like John Candy up there now. I'd like to see. So can I just go forward and thank you. I'd like to thank the Golden Valley Historical Society and the Golden Valley Rotary Club and Courage Kenny for this great opportunity. As the polio chairman for the Rotary District, which runs from Minneapolis up to Alexandria, out to Redwood Falls, down to Fairmont, 70-some clubs. Most of the people that I speak to are Rotarians in those clubs, because Eradicating Polio is Rotary's flagship initiative, and so they hear a lot about it. And this is just a great opportunity to talk to some folks that maybe haven't heard as much about polio. So it's a real treat. Well, my time is short, so let's just dive right in. Okay. The viral infection of the spinal cord that targets motor nerves has been with us since early Egyptian times. And there are many, many other opportunities in retrospect. Is that something I need to be concerned about? No. Okay. Thanks. In retrospect, that we look back and we say, hey, that looks a lot like polio. So this is Roma the doorkeeper is what it's referred to as. And it's a decorated stone frequently used in funerals. Its depiction of a man with a withered leg is believed to be a deformity characteristic of polio. I'm going to run through some quick history because I don't want to waste a lot of time. But 1789, Michael Underwood, who was a pediatrician in London, he published the first clear description of a paralytic disease of the infants, and he put it in the medical textbook. 1868, the first epidemics appeared in 14 cases in Oslo, Norway. Then 13 cases in northern Sweden in 1881. About the same time, the idea began to be suggested that the sporadic cases of infantile paralysis might be, what? Contagious. The next significant epidemic was 10 times larger than the previous outbreaks, with 132 cases, as you heard earlier, in the state of Vermont, in the US, 1894. Then 1,031 cases in Sweden in 1905. Then 3,840 cases in Sweden in 1911. Now, during the second decade of the 20th century, polio was well on its way to becoming a widely feared periodic phenomenon. In the 1940s and the early 50s, Western Europe and North America lived through summertime terrors that we heard about earlier, brought about by nearly annual polio epidemics. In 1952, the year that Sister Kenny died, which is interesting because she didn't live to see the vaccines. In 1952, approximately 21,000 cases of paralytic polio were recorded in the U.S. As outbreaks were concentrated in the summer and the early autumn, children were kept away from swimming pools, theaters, birthday parties, other crowded places where they might be exposed to the dreaded virus. Outbreaks were widely reported in the press, and polio victims encased in iron lungs were often displayed in public places such as department stores to encourage donations to research and combat the disease. That picture happens to be of a hospital, but this was not an uncommon sight. And postings by the health department on doors of residences where polio had been identified. Whether our own U.S. President Franklin Delano Roosevelt suffered from polio or Guillain-Barré syndrome is really inconsequential to the point I'm going to make now, that he advanced our ability to prevent polio through funding. That funding had great impact upon the research into infantile paralysis, which led to the discovery of the vaccines by Dr. Jonas Salk and Dr. Albert Sabin in the mid-1950s. By 1960, now the world had 2 cheap and effective vaccines. 2 cheap and effective vaccines. I don't know if I need to drill down, I don't know if I have the time to. One's an oral polio vaccine and the other is an injectable polio vaccine. One would have thought that eradication at that point would be pretty quick in coming. You got 2 cheap and effective vaccines, let's get them out there. But by 1985, there were still 387,000 cases in 125 countries. Those countries were called endemic, common, normally occurring and expected in a given population. The World Health Organization kind of thought, that's going to be the norm. But it was Rotary International who saw it simply as a geopolitical and a logistical problem to overcome. They believed it strongly enough to make a what? A promise. They made a promise that they would see to a polio-free world. I don't know about you, but for a person of integrity, a promise means a lot. Over the next 40 years then, Rotary played a catalyst role in bringing polio to the brink of extinction. Catalyst. Everyone knows what a catalyst is? Makes things happen. Rotary helped build the Global Polio Eradication Initiative. Who's in there? Who is in there? Who is in there? World Health Organization is in there. We dragged them into it. The Centers for Disease Control, UNICEF, the Gates Foundation, Gavi, and by the way, could you just get every government of every country in the world to get on board as well? That's what Rotary has done. It is the greatest public-private healthcare initiative in the history of man. In 2022, 10 scientists drafted a declaration to stress the urgent necessity of eradicating polio and strongly endorse the Global Polio Eradication Initiative strategic plan. This strategy aims to overcome the remaining hurdles, which I'll talk about later, strengthen our healthcare systems throughout the world, and in affected countries in particular, and deliver a polio-free world. Since then, 3,200 scientists from 120 different countries have signed on. In short, the declaration reads, "We, members of the global scientific community, declare our continued conviction that polio eradication is feasible and urgently needed. The journey has been interesting, and the obstacles are full of way weird characters, odd characters. Apathy. Apathy on the part of those who don't have any connection or reference to polio. There was a time when everybody knew somebody that had polio. we're losing those stories. And fatigue. Fatigue is as real here as it is on a sports field or a sports court. And anyone who plays sports knows about fatigue. It is a challenge for us to keep the energy level high and constantly remind ourselves of the commitment and promise that we made and what we have overcome to get here. We can't give up and we can't give in. Another hurdle, anti-vaxxers and vaccine hesitancy. Sit on that for a second. When we began, you couldn't imagine that this would be a real thing that you would have to contend with. But it is. And to embrace our differences, even within Rotary, and continue the focused fight to end polio, here's what I do. It's part of a longer story, but I came to this through a series of real introspections about trying to understand vaccine hesitancy, Rotary, polio, and now I can say, we can argue the point back and forth all day long. We probably won't convince each other, but I tell you what, maybe we could agree to this. Perhaps you could support the Rotary Foundation's initiatives for safe water and sanitation. I happen to have some contribution forms in the back. It's a box you check. Safe water and sanitation. Those funds won't go towards immunizations. But because polio is spread primarily through unclean water, we will be fighting the fight together and not against each other. Who could imagine? The Taliban's distrust of the West kept us from millions of children from immunizing millions of children until they came to power a few years ago. This is in Afghanistan. More about that a little bit later. I have to jump ahead. COVID. COVID was a major interruption in polio vaccination campaigns, and it drained away resources needed for polio vaccines. And cases of polio went up, showing a correlation between funding and eradication. Now I want to tell you a little story. Medical research and practice have had their difficulties, even as it relates to polio. One of these was the cutter incident. 1954, Bernice Eddy of the National Institutes of Health performed safety tests on inactivated polio vaccines that were developed by Jonas Salk for Cutter Laboratories. Salk's inactivated polio vaccine was a killed virus vaccine. Killed. But Bernice and her team discovered that a batch of Cutter Laboratories vaccine contained residual live polio virus. 3 of the 6 batches paralyzed monkeys, the test monkeys, and therefore contained live polio virus. Now these findings, they pointed to a flaw in the vaccine manufacturing that they were doing at Cutter Laboratories. Eddy, Bernice here, reported her findings, but was what? She was ignored. She was actually removed from her position. The identified problems with the vaccine was not passed down to the licensing advisory committee. The flawed vaccine was licensed for public use. 40,000 children developed minor polio, 113 were paralyzed, and 5 children died. Once this became known, the vaccine manufacturers then withheld 3.9 million doses of polio vaccine. Polio vaccine programs were suspended in the United States, Great Britain, Sweden, West Germany, South Africa. The Cutter incident is considered one of the worst pharmaceutical disasters in U.S. history. And I unfortunately have to report to you that those that were responsible for the oversight were barely held accountable. Now is a good time to tell you about another thing. A rare but real danger of contracting a case of paralytic polio from the vaccine. If I had somebody come and say, Tim, You gotta tell me, isn't it true that you could get a case of paralytic polio from the vaccine? Yeah, it's true. This is rare and only possible with oral polio vaccine and not the injectable polio vaccine. It can occur in areas of poor hygiene when immunization programs are not adequately concluded and the weakened virus in the vaccine regains a virility in the relatively brief time that it can survive in sewage systems and then passes on to another individual. Another unvaccinated individual can be adversely affected. Now, you may have heard of such a case in upstate New York 2 years ago. And another noteworthy case happened in Gaza during the fighting last year, which then led to what? A pause in the fighting. They've been talking about having a ceasefire for a long time. One case of polio shows up and it's whoa, whoa, whoa. Let's take a pause and immunize hundreds of thousands of our children, both Jewish and Palestinian. This is not the same old story. Not the same old story that I've been telling for 12 years. In fact, when I started, it was let's stop the pain. P-A-I-N. Let's stop the pain. Pakistan, Afghanistan, India, Nigeria. In just 12 years, I can't use it anymore because polio has been eradicated from India and Nigeria. In the short 12 years that I've been doing this. The Taliban, which I showed you earlier, was an obstacle to us getting it. It wasn't that they didn't care about their children, it was that they didn't trust their government that was friendly with the West. The Taliban, now in charge in Afghanistan, is conducting their own immunization programs that are reaching millions of children that we never had access to. And I told you about the rare cases of oral polio vaccine mutating into a more virulent form, circulating vaccine-derived polio. The novel oral polio vaccine is now 50 to 100 times more stable and has been developed and is in use. It's been used millions of times now. Vaccine-derived polio cases are now much rarer and the numbers are dropping like a rock. Rotary has been at the heart of the fight. The success in the numbers is in the numbers. There have been, how many this year? Anyone?
Well.
Close, really close.
9.
39. 39 cases in 2025, limited to 2 countries, Pakistan and Afghanistan. Does anyone remember the 387,000 cases in 1985 in 125 countries? The truth is in the numbers. Pakistan and Afghanistan, those are the last 2 remaining endemic countries. And we've helped to immunize billions of children, fostered collaboration, and raised money. How much is this, Tim? Well, it's about $1 billion a year effort. Rotary raises $50 million. Rotary International commits to raising $50 million, which, by the way, adds up to about $1,500 per club. Why $50 million? Because Bill and Melinda Gates, back when they were together, now it's the Gates Foundation, gives 2 to 1. We raise $50 million, they give $100 million every year, and they've done it for years. But the overall program requires all of us, and we're short. We're short about $3 billion. If you look at the budget to 2029, we're short about $3 billion. Now is not the time to move to the next thing or leave the remaining work to others. This will be of great benefit to the world. Dr. William Fogy, the former head of the Centers for Disease Control and also the Carter Center, made a compelling analysis, the correlation between improved healthcare and peace. Our initial immunization efforts thus far have created healthcare systems in areas of the world that never had healthcare before. And those now have become healthcare systems in their own right, and they also are great disease monitoring stations which is how I'm able to tell you there's only 39 cases in 2025. Successful eradication of polio is going to build energy for other collaborations. Once we conquer that, what would you like to do next? Oh, and by the way, we'll have $1 billion to do it. Do I have time for one more story?
One more story.
A mouse looked through a crack in the farmhouse wall, and he saw a mouse trap. And he runs back, scurries back to the barn, and he says, "There's a mouse trap in the house! There's a mouse trap in the house!" And the chicken was heading in a hunting back for grain and says, "Well, that's just really very interesting, Mr. Mouse, but I'm quite busy here. I'm quite busy." And the cow says, "I'm just not sure how that affects me, Mr. Mouse." And the pig said, "Be assured that you are in my prayers." So the mouse turned away, dejected, to face the mousetrap alone. Now that night, the sound of the mousetrap catching its prey could be heard throughout the farmhouse. Farmer's wife got up to go investigate. What she didn't see in the darkness was that the tail of a poisonous snake had been caught in the trap, and the snake bit her. So the doctor rushed her off to the doctor. Doctor says you need to take her home and treat her for fever. So the farmer dutifully took his wife back home and went to prepare what everybody knows you use to treat a fever: chicken noodle soup. And he goes to the barn to get the soup's main ingredient, chicken. His wife did not get well. So many people came to sit with her. They had the cows slaughtered in order to feed them all. And when she died, so many people came to the funeral that he had that cow butchered in order to feed everybody that came to the funeral. So, when you learn of one who is threatened somewhere on this earth, I want you to remember we're all at risk, and such is the case with polio. I hope you'll consider that we're all at risk. As long as there's one case of polio that remains, it needs a human host. Once we eradicate it from the human population, we can be done with it, as we have done with, correct, smallpox. 3,600 years of polio history from that first slide I just showed you. It's about to end. Wouldn't you like to play a part in it? Thank you.
There's the mouse.
My mouse. I'll turn it over to Shep.
Thank you very much. Can you, just working? Yes, got the thumbs up. Can you guys give them applause one more time? I should move over there. Yeah. Well, I'm Shep Harris, and I am with the Golden Valley Rotary Club. I want to thank Lynn and the rest of the board here with the Golden Valley Historical Society for allowing us to co-sponsor this great event. And thank you so much, Erica. Thank you, Tim. You guys just wowed us with the history, with the information. I'm inspired by Sister Kenny. My wife is a nurse, so now if I go home and I call her sister, she's not a charge nurse yet. She might be, although it might be kind of weird to call her sister to our Jewish family might find that kind of weird, because that's not a term we use much. Anyway, I'm up here because you heard about this challenge. Am I going to make you drop and do 50 push-ups right now? No, although that would be kind of entertaining. We can get that on camera. Instead, I have an alternative for you if that sounds, 50 push-ups sounds too extreme. We at Rotary, on a weekly basis, when we get together on Tuesdays at 12:15 at the Brookview Community Center, we have lots of educational talks, very similar to what Erica and Tim did today, about a variety of topics. But we always, before we have our speakers, we always have what's called Happy Bucks. And we have what we call the honey pot, which is in the back, actually, on the back table there with our name tags, our Rotary name tags. And what we do is we get up there and it's all by choice. I don't want to call it peer pressure, but people get up there and they talk about what makes them happy that day or that week. Great news about family or experiences, what have you. And but they're putting money in the honey pot. And so we're always putting a few bucks. But the whole point is really it's a fun way to raise money to help end polio. Well, not the mouse, but to end polio. And as you can see, I'm like a walking advertisement for that. So if you were inspired by what you heard tonight, if you are energetic, you're feeling like, okay, what can I do? The boulder is almost to the top of the mountain, and we just need, we need more pushing. And then there'll be no more Pakistan or Afghanistan or any other letters to an acronym. We can, people years from now, maybe even back here at the Golden Valley Historical Society, can come back and say, look what our community did to end polio and eradicate it from the face of the earth. So if you want to do something like that, we have the honey pot in the back, and you can add a couple bucks if you want. You can add a couple $100 if you want. And if you don't have any bucks on you, like I don't actually, fortunately I have my debit card with me. And our president, our Golden Valley Rotary president, Alicia Weiss, who's standing in the back right now, and she's waving, she's doing the royal court wave there. She is brilliant because we now no longer can use the excuse at our weekly meetings of, oh, I don't have any cash in my wallet. She said, that's okay, I have my phone. She can take your card and do the little tap, and you can do a donation that way if you'd like as well. And just for incentives here, every dollar that you give, Rotary, our Golden Valley Rotary will match up to $2,000 tonight, all for Polio Plus, all for this global program that you guys can participate with. So I would encourage you to do that before you leave. And again, thank you so much to the Golden Valley Historical Society and to Erica and to Tim for their wonderful presentations. So I'm going to hand the microphone back to Lynn. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Steph. So, we have an opportunity now to ask our speakers questions. I'm going to give you this one. Okay, but I'm going to give you that one. And if you guys want chairs, we have chairs, but do we have questions for our speakers? And I'll come around with a mic.
I don't know if this is a question probably for Erica, but like your neighbor has polio and she's about 90, and she said it's happened a couple times when she's went to the doctor that they're like, well, she said, I can't take that medication that he was going to prescribe to her, and she said, I can't do that because I have polio. Is some of the polio dollars go to education for young physicians who may never even experience this, except maybe in some other countries or in smaller numbers? I mean, is there? It seemed odd to me that they wouldn't have known that you couldn't combine those kind of medications with some with polio.
Sorry, is this on?
It's on.
Oh. Was this a provider, like a Courage County provider?
I don't think so.
Oh, okay.
I think it was just a regular physician.
Okay. And your question, Teresa, it was if some of the funds raised through
for
Rotary go to
education
education for providers?
Yeah.
Well, I can tell you this part, is that in 2015-2016, this Rotary district partnered with Courage County for a post-polio syndrome symposium. 2 years in a row, 175 people came from around the country on each year. And so on a district level, we did something for our post-polio syndrome folks in the area. But the money that Rotary raises goes directly to providing the infrastructure and the immunizations for delivery.
Thank you. Sorry, I'm not a Rotary member yet. Maybe someday, so I did not know how to answer the dollars question. I will just say, and I'm happy now that we have each other's contact information as well, I can speak pretty confidently for our Courage County providers. So they're board certified in physical medicine and rehab, and that is what they are trained in, and what they do, what they're comfortable with, is any sort of neuro, brainstem, spinal cord, stroke, post-polio. I think that is very much in their wheelhouse, and I think they would be comfortable or a good fit, or really any PM&R type provider, I think would be helpful.
Did you have a question?
Oh, yeah, I was just gonna ask about the post-polio syndrome, where you get very painful reaction around your knee, your nerves, years later, you know, like 30, 40, 50 years after you've had it. And is there anything being done at like Courage Center? Is it physical rehabilitation type stuff? Okay.
Yeah, so I should also go on record saying, I'm not a clinician myself, so I know enough to be dangerous, but can't speak to like super specific things. But I know from my teams in the campus that I support in community services and therapies, where we most frequently see individuals right now with post-polio is an outpatient therapy. So it's typically physical therapy, occupational therapy. So it is very much practice like gentle movements with limbs, that individualized treatment plan, going back to the Sister Kenny slide, so helping educate individuals so that they're comfortable replicating those exercises at home as well. So it's not only I do something once every 2 weeks when I'm with my physical therapist, and a lot of education with caregivers as well as an additional assist. And then we do have quite a bit of individuals who participate in our warm water aquatic therapy. So we have both one-on-one, we have group classes, and that's always been pretty popular just because it's very gentle, comforting. You don't have the same sort of gravity pull, and that tends to be a hit.
I'm just curious, quick show of hands, how many people in the room have seen the Hollywood film entitled Sister Kenny?
It's
Am I the only one? Starring Rosalind Russell, 1946. She was nominated for the Academy Award for Best Actress. So that's a pretty good picture. If you ever get a chance to see it, it's worth your while. And Hollywood is famous for exaggerating and embellishing.
Yes, sir.
But if I understand correctly, they didn't do any of that when they made that movie. Her life was interesting enough that they didn't need to exaggerate or embellish, and they do a good job of sticking to the facts. And I'm just curious. It's not a movie that gets shown very often, but if you happen to see it on TV, it's worth your while. I was looking at your chronology of her life, and I noticed a gap. I don't know if anybody else noticed it, but it seemed to jump from 1919 to 1930. In other words, where's the 20s? And I'm trying to think back to the movie, and I think she was just plugging away in the Australian outback, kind of perfecting her and developing her system.
Yeah. So thank you. It's not as though she was lying dormant or hibernated for a decade and then like popped back on the scene. I was trying to, knowing I had like 15 to 20 minutes, and I even originally had a slide with the picture of the Hollywood movie. And I'm like, oh, time constraints, and I cut it. So I'm really happy that you mentioned that. So you are correct. So this is the kind of 1920s. It's still when she's in Australia. She's still practicing as a nurse. She's refining her techniques. She just didn't necessarily have any noteworthy, groundbreaking, opening a clinic kind of hallmark things. So I didn't specifically call out 1920s, but very much she was still active in refining polio rehab. Good call out and good catch.
Tim, you talked a little bit about how much Rotary is projected to raise. What's the timeline for eradicating polio?
That's a great question. We've had several target dates. The last date that we targeted was 2026, which is just next year. But we're still looking at, you still have to do immunizations 3 to 5 years following the very last case and environmental, clear environmental testing. So we're talking more like 2029, but the last official thing I heard was last polio case before 2026.
It's a very short timeline then.
It is.
Yeah, very, very ambitious.
In the last few years, we were down as low as 4 cases for a year. 4 cases. The way polio works, you guys, is that if we identify a case, for that one case, there are 200 carriers. So that's how it can spread quite quickly. If we have one affected person that gets identified, we're pretty assured that there are 199 other cases in the area that are not symptomatic.
Other questions?
Do you have a sense for why Minneapolis? It almost defies credibility that this lady
I
from
know.
Australia comes over here and of all places winds up in Minneapolis. I saw on your list Mayo Clinic,
Yep,
but that's Rochester
correct.
during this interval. And this is going to sound terrible, but I don't necessarily think of Minneapolis as some enlightened liberal bastion during the 40s and 50s.
Yeah.
So why Minneapolis?
Well, we can initially thank the jerks who kind of kicked her out of New York and Chicago. So that's initially how she kind of made her way to Minnesota. I think the why Mayo initially is Mayo has always held, and it still does to this day, it's got the clout, it's got the name. She was really searching for some place to give her credibility. So Mayo is kind of a good natural fit. And then as she's starting to get, I'm not going to call them followers, but as her ideas are starting to get traction, she's always been this pioneer kind of entrepreneur, the what next, where can I go? So I don't know the exact, in her mind, what prompted like the Mayo to the jump to University of Minnesota, beyond just that she's always looking to move forward, expand, spread her thoughts and her Sister Kenny technique. And University of Minnesota has also been one of the, she's already in Minnesota, it's one of the hallmarks. And University of Minnesota as well has always been a huge research juggernaut, so also just a good pairing for her. And at the time, when she's coming in the 1940s, what she is proposing is still somewhat kind of avant-garde or new, and very much, if you think about it, still in like the research and development stage. So that was a good pairing for what she's looking for as well.
I think that would be something interesting to look into, because being from Mayo's backyard originally, I can attest to the fact that until the 1970s, Rochester was still very rural. You would have a lot of farmers who would literally drive their livestock down Broadway in order to load them on trains close to where Mayo sits and take them to the packing house either in St. Paul, Chicago, St. Louis, wherever. And so I would say between that and then also the rural aspect of Rochester at that point in time as well, the ideas she was proposing were probably not the type of thing that would have taken hold quite as well in Rochester as they would have here. So.
And I also learned that Nick has his master's in history, which I think is shining through. Thank you for that.
One more question. Tim, you mentioned the challenge of anti-vaxxers. How is that affecting Rotary's efforts?
Well, so not at all. Rotary just continues to march forward with their promise of a polio-free world. They don't mire themselves and get involved in the politics of it at all. I carry the message for the district, and I carry the message about the fresh water, because we're heavily invested in so many different things. But the safe water initiatives are something that would also help in the fight against polio, because polio is spread primarily through unclean water. Well, I keep carrying that message so that even vaccine hesitant people within Rotary can feel that they are welcome, that they are a part of Rotary. They can contribute. They can fight the polio fight on a different front. That's okay.
Great, thank you. Well, we want to thank Tim and Erica tonight and Shep for the challenge, for your just fascinating and deep history, not only of Rotary's effort, but why Courage Kenny is here and what that background is and why that unique attraction and that unique combination is here in our backyard. So thank you all for coming tonight. Let's give her another round of applause.